Well, now we're going live. This is always the worst part where I don't really know when we're live. We're live.
Woo!
We did it.
Azure Functions, April 3rd webcast.
April 3rd webcast. Welcome, everyone. Oh, and it looks like Alex has YouTube open,
Caller,
so he's going to have
turn down your radio.
Caller, turn off your radio. Welcome, everyone, to our live webcast. We are very excited to be here today. Before we start, we will start with some introductions.
Hello.
Alex, for the lovely people at home or at work who may not know you.
There's a sick spouse at home listening in, so I got to introduce myself for them.
Hello.
Hello. I'm Alex Karsher. I'm one of the PMs on the Functions team. I own a bunch of networking stuff, observability stuff, and now, coming soon, the premium plan.
Yeah, okay, coming less soon even now. That's great. And then I'm Jeff Holland. I'm a PM on the Functions team as well. So we are very excited to be with you today. If this is your first time joining one of our webcasts, it's
welcome.
Pretty chill. Yeah, welcome.
Yeah.
This is the best one to join. You'll notice here we've got some live chat flowing over on the right-hand side. We've already had some pre-show chatter about sandwiches and other important things. So we'll answer your questions live along the way, or let us know if something's gone terribly wrong. We're going to talk about what's new, what's coming, some upcoming events, even some highlights in the community, and as I mentioned, Q&A.
Yeah.
Should we jump right into it?
Yeah.
Let's do it. So, first one. Let me show this quickly. Azure Functions Live. There's a nice little diamond here because...
Yeah!
Biggest announcement, Alex.
We are public previewing the Functions Premium plan. We have a blog up for it, a bunch of stuff to get into it. It is bringing enterprise functionality to a dynamically scaling serverless plan. I'm very excited. And we have everybody loved the Tim Tam Slams, so we need to keep the social eating going live. We have some premium Martinellis here that we're going to enjoy.
What an occasion.
It's going to be real good.
Look at us open this live. So this is in celebration of the premium plan, so we only got the most premium of beverages.
It does. It requires a can opener, as all fine bubbly beverages do, not a cork. I did come prepared, though. Can opener.
Oh, look at that nice bubble.
Cheers, Jeff.
Cheers, Alex. This is great. Congratulations. And Alex has got for us here in just a second, too, as we enjoy. Oh, great. You poured mine. It's even chilled.
Oh,
Where did you have this?
I had this in the refrigerator. One of the employee benefits is a refrigerator.
Ooh, free refrigerator space for all employees.
Here, I'll leave this here.
Yeah, our nice prop to remind us that we're premium now.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Congratulations. And for those at home joining along, exciting news.
Oh, that's got a nice nose to it.
It's nice. I'm a connoisseur of Martinellis.
Yeah, some apple seed.
So, Alex, you have brought with us some education as well. We've talked some about the premium plan before, but I imagine there's still some questions about what it is, why it matters. And that's where we brought you in.
So I've prepared some nice light reading for everyone. This is straight off of the blog post comparing the consumption plan, our existing serverless offering, with the premium plan, our enterprise-focused kind of high-value serverless plan. So getting into specifically what you get with the premium plan, we are adding a feature that I'm very excited about called reserved instances, which are going to give you controls to eliminate cold start in your app. It's basically a buffer of pre-warmed instances that you have for your app. We also allow you in the premium plan to configure the maximum and minimum scale out. These are all things that people used to use app service plans for. A lot of people came to us and said, hey, man, we love the serverless development model, but we want a predictable amount of scale. And now we have that in something that scales dynamically depending on your incoming load. You can also configure your instance size in the premium plan, so a PV1 to P3 V2 equivalent size. So that's about a 1-core 3.5 gig RAM machine to a 4-core 12 gig RAM machine. You can also connect the premium plan to VNet connectivity and run it longer than a consumption plan.
As long as you want, in fact.
Any time you want, up to 12 minutes in the public preview, and then sooner we will have up to longer times. So Moving on to kind of what I think is the headline feature for this is our pre-warmed instances, or how we are going to give you the knobs to eliminate cold start. To start, I'm going to show you, this is the serverless scale graph as shown in every serverless meetup ever. In the light green line, the kind of lime green line, you have your incoming load, and in the dark green line, you have the available consumption workers in a consumption plan. And in a perfect world, the moment you get your first request, you have one worker available, and the moment that worker is fully satiated, you have a second worker available, and so on and so forth, topping off at exactly enough scale to satiate your load, and then that scale stays around for a little bit as your requests fall off. But in reality, a lot of scale curves look something like this, where when the very first request comes in, you have to wait some amount of time for that first worker to come online. And then if you have really, really bad cold start, you have a lot of stuff you want to load in, a big ML model or a bunch of JavaScript packages or something, it can be a long time before your first worker comes on. And this is kind of what I think is the worst case scenario for a very long cold start, where by the time the first worker is online, it's already almost completely saturated, and when the request for the next worker comes in, you are already behind your load curve. And so what we're doing with pre-warmed workers is giving you a single worker of buffer, one pre-warmed instance above your current load. So you can see at kind of our 0, point, we have no load but one worker ready. And the moment we get a request, we kick off a new request for a new worker. And even though it still takes a long time to load, we haven't, gotten rid of all of our JavaScript packages or gotten rid of our huge ML model. We have the amount of capability to handle the load.
I love it. Yeah, this is such a clear explanation to me. And it's like, in a perfect world, if we could predict the future or figure this out, ideally we could get there, and we're trying to get cold start lower. But the fact that now you at least have control to say, give me that buffer, is a huge win.
Yeah, and this also illustrates something that I really like about pre-warmed workers is it's better than a pinger. If you have a pinger where you're just calling your app every 10 minutes to keep one worker good, you'll be good for the 0 to 1 condition, but for every load step after that, you're going to get hammered by your slow cold start.
Great.
So let's get onto a little load test and show how this works in reality.
Great.
So we're going to start with showing where we're at now. If you make a brand new function app, a new consumption function, and you go to the live metric stream to look at your running infrastructure, you will see that there's nothing. Zero instances are running, and this is perfect. We have no load hitting our app. So we're going to go to a load test, and it is Alkarshi load. I'm going to throw 800 requests a second at this app and see what happens. So back over here at my live metric stream, we can see actually up at the top, this is the number of servers I have online. And of course, we're repurposing a web app monitoring tool, so it's just going to tell you servers.
Sure.
We can see our resource consumption and our number of workers here at the top, and we can see it climbing very quickly up to 789. My target was 800 requests a second, so my requests per second are going to climb up above 800, stabilize, and then stabilize down to 800.
Still pretty impressive, though, that within the 30 seconds of you talking, we went from 0 to 15 servers running your function app.
Yeah, so we can see over here quickly on my load test, the green is my number of open connections, and the blue is my latency. I'm trying to get around our little picture-in-picture here.
Oh, I'll get rid of it. There you go.
There we go. Cool.
Yeah, I just love looking at myself at the same time I look at graphs, but I'll live without it.
You can see here it took us about 25 seconds to stabilize to a point where we could handle that load comfortably, and we hit a peak 1 second rolling average latency of about 4.2 seconds. And that isn't necessarily our cold start. It's because we built up an HTTP queue as we were taking in requests.
Yeah, the system's having to react to respond to get to a stable state, and in the process, it's getting a longer queue, which results in this big peak that you see there.
Yeah, and we scaled up to 18 workers, which also I think is really impressive. I think these load numbers are awesome for what you're paying for this to run idle, which is nothing.
Yeah, the consumption plan is still really good. There's nothing wrong with it, but it does, you have to be aware that if you're going to go from 0 to 800 a second, that you might have that big peak.
Yeah, it'll take a second. So if we go over to a premium plan, you can see here with no requests coming in, I already have one worker online. I haven't had to do anything. There's no pinger hitting this app. Actually, you can see our platform touching it every once in a while to keep it alive, but it's nothing I had to do. So I have my one instance online, and if I go back to my load test, now I could send this 800 requests a second, but because these are running on considerably faster workers, I'm just going to send it 1,300 requests a second.
More power!
And see what she can take. So I'm going to stay here really quick. You can see immediately my peak 1 second rolling latency is 80 milliseconds.
Wow.
And I am not climbing my incoming requests. A little bit of time to scale out to one more worker, but it still was under a second of 1 second rolling latency. And I am immediately within 12 seconds at my 10 milliseconds of average latency. And if I look at my live metric stream, I went from 0 to 3 workers with a very, very nice straight jump up to my steady state. So that was my 1 worker online and then bringing 2 more on through the pre-warmed worker count. That's what you can get with the premium
perfect.
plan.
Yeah, it's a super great visualization. If you even go back to the load test, I know there was this slight hiccup in there, which even when I've run this a bunch of times, I often don't even see that. But like from the get-go, it started right at the sub-millisecond, and it looks like there was a second in there where we had a slight hiccup, but it's preview. We'll sort that out. But again, right from the get-go, starting at super low latency, bigger workers, having that extra buffer for scale operations, no cold start for that first request. Very cool stuff.
Yeah. I think this is going to be super awesome.
I agree. And we'll just take a quick pause. So first off, there was a comment. People are upset about not having Tim Tams, but they liked the celebration. Arthur Dooner. Do you know an Arthur Dooner?
I do know an Arthur Dooner.
He just said he's excited about all the stuff, and he's watching his college friend present all of it.
Heck yeah.
So audience participation from Arthur.
Oh my gosh, we have the whole RPI crowd out there.
That's great. Whatever RPI means, hello.
No, Arthur's WPI. Oh my gosh, I've made the mistake my parents made so many times before me.
And then we also have a slogan, which is the premium plan from Mark, staying ahead of the curve.
Staying ahead of the curve.
Boom,
Very
ship it.
Nice.
And one quick question, actually, because I've actually set this up too. So Alex asked a good question, which is Loader.io requires that you do some validation on the domain before you can run a load test. Alex, how do you set these up?
Here, do you actually want to hop back over to my
Yeah,
screen?
sure.
This is actually a good time because then I can jump around the premium portal a little bit. Let's go to my plan here. I'm going to have to navigate a little roundabout to get to this app. I use one of my favorite functions features, underrated, Azure Function Proxies.
Azure Function Proxies.
Which allow you to set up really simple HTTP routing rules in your app. And so if I go in here to my proxies, and the portal always loads as fast as you possibly want it to.
Especially when you're live.
Yeah, especially when you're live. So if I go into this app, I have a really simple function proxy called Loader. And all it takes is a route template, which is my Loader.io authentication key, no backend URL, and then a response override that is giving me my Loader.io authentication key.
Yeah.
And so this is how, with no extra resources, I can authenticate with Loader.io.
Nice. Very good.
And yeah, let me take this second to walk around a couple of the knobs you get in the premium plan, specifically 3 knobs. You get the scale control for your plan. You can set a minimum instance and maximum burst, as well as a pre-warmed instance count, which for the first couple of weeks of the preview is going to be from 0 to 1. Any number you want, as long as it's 0 or 1.
Binary.
And in a couple of weeks, we'll have it so that you can select from 0 to 10 pre-warmed instances. So this is if you want to scale out your app ahead of load, if you have an email campaign heading out or an app that at 9 a.m. is going to get a bunch of loads, so you want to write a little ARM script that at 8:50 you warm up 10 workers, you can do that using the premium plan out of the box. And you also have a scale up control, which you didn't used to have in the consumption plan, where you can select any worker size you want. And obviously, I'm looking to have the best scale test possible, so I have the most expensive worker selected. We also have inside of our controls for the premium plan, we have all of the network VNet integration controls from the app service plan.
Yeah, this is a huge feature of premium, is being able to connect to a VNet. And again, with the same stuff where you're not going to have to pay an extra cold start penalty just to turn this feature on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Awesome. Well, very good. Looks awesome. The pricing, Toon asked about the pricing. Pricing's live now, so it's in preview pricing. It's I guess I would say it's comparable to an app service plan instance, though slightly different, especially because we are in preview mode.
Yep.
And Azure Key Vault references any word on GA. That's probably a question for later, but I'll answer it now. And it's being worked on. I don't have a timeline for GA, but I know there's a few last features in terms of some UX, some logging, and some better conditions to help with that as well. So answered a few questions along the way. We will jump back now to the slide deck as we go into, now that we've shared what's new, what else is coming. So the first one here, maybe Alex, do you want to explain what Bundles is and why it matters? I think we explained it in the last webcast briefly, but mostly like, why should anyone care about this Bundles thing?
So Bundles are going to take all of the extensions that you install in current V2 functions to use any of our bindings. So if you want any trigger type or binding other than HTTP, like storage, Cosmos, Event Hub, Event Grid, those all require an extension, and it requires a NuGet install. And if you're a JavaScript dev or a Python dev, it's a little weird to install NuGet and manage all of these C# packages. And so with Bundles, we take all of those packages and put them in one functions platform bundle that you reference when you're developing your code, and then the platform manages it for you. So you deploy just your code in that reference to a bundle, and then on the hosted version of Functions, we pull down the latest version of the bundle with all the packages you need and load them up.
Perfect. That's great. Yeah, like it's exactly that. The feedback we get a lot from customers is that like, I'm a Java dev, I'm a JavaScript dev, I'm a Python dev. Why, when I try to publish this, is it saying I need .NET Core installed and it needs to do a NuGet installation? And so Bundles is the answer to where like, now you can just do even a simple or a complex app, never have to even know that .NET or NuGet exist, and this becomes much more behind the scenes. The other big one that we'll mention, dependency injection is coming so soon. It is so soon. In fact, I don't know if I'm ready for this. Let me see. I'm sharing my screen now, so I better be. I have a project to give you a flavor for what this will look like, and I am getting this wonderful error again. So let me show you quickly what dependency injection will look like, because I know there's been a lot of interest on it. So I have here a very simple HTTP triggered function. The one thing I want to call out here is that this is not public static. This is using a constructor. I'm passing in an HTTP client, factoried HTTP client, which I'm then setting. And what we're going to enable you the option to do is create something very similar to this, which is a startup class. You don't have to do it this way. You can also use inject attributes. It's not going to be called this. I'm showing this live. I know some of you are going to go recreate this. We're going to rename this. It's going to be called like iFunction Startup, and we're going to create a new API service for an iFunctions builder. So this isn't shipped yet. I'm just showing you what it will look like when it does, but I'm not making any promises that this is going to work if you go recreate this now. But I'm using the HTTP client factory here to say, give me a singleton HTTP client for my services. I'm creating a singleton dependency mapping right here where I've registered my services. And I could also create scoped services as well, or transient services. So that's coming very soon, soon enough for me to be able to show that demo. And we're getting some weird .NET community stand-up text, but that's not a big deal. I'll ignore it. Azure DevOps improvements are always being worked on and always coming. PowerShell support is coming. PowerShell support for V2, and I called it vAwesome just because PowerShell in the new one seems super awesome. So that's coming shortly. It's in private preview now. I've been told if you send us a tweet, we can get you onboarded to that private preview. Tweet's probably the easiest way. And then we have more stuff that's coming, but we're not going to talk about it here.
This is a teaser for the next live webcast.
Yeah, live from Build in Seattle. So we are working on some super secret stuff for Build. Great. With that tease.
Yeah.
A few community highlights that I wanted to call out here, and I'll get rid of our faces while we do those highlights. Okay, first off, there was a global integration boot camp that happened over this last weekend. I saw some amazing content, just a few call outs from some people on Twitter who I knew were giving some talks related to functions, durable functions, serverless. So thank you so much for all of those contributions. They seemed great from the tweets I read. It seemed like some great ones. So that was very cool to see the community come. Two more. These are actually both cloud advocates, but I thought both were really awesome and worth looking into. So Anthony Chu, who's got a very creative Twitter handle of Anthony Chu, he built a real-time speech-to-text and translation service with Azure Functions, SignalR Service, and the cognitive services. This is really cool and very slick. And he even used it for some Channel 9 stuff. I can't remember what it was. Maybe one of the .NET community stand-ups. So this is super slick. Chloe, have you seen this one that Chloe did that's been getting all this media attention?
I haven't. No.
Okay, so Chloe, at Chloe Condon, who's a cloud advocate as well, she wrote a Medium post about a week ago called An Ambivert's Guide to Azure Functions, where she wrote a super cool Azure function that she's got this little flick button, like I've got a few of them in my bag. When she pushes the flick button, it calls an Azure function that uses the Twilio binding and the Twilio API to send a phone call to her phone that shows up as my boyfriend. And when she answers it, then an automated voice says, hey, it's me, your boyfriend. I need you to come home right now.
No, this is the get out of meeting free card.
Exactly. And it's so nice. And the cool thing about this is like I saw there's been a bunch of like it's been picked up now by a bunch of media posts. And so like I just saw it. The Daily Dot picked it up. This piece called Motherboard, which I can't remember exactly which publication it's from. It's just a cool demo, and her blog post actually goes really deep into Azure Functions too. So I thought it was one worth highlight.
Nice. You know, I think this may be the first person dating Azure Functions.
it's a fact, and hopefully the scale to zero does not break some serious hearts.
Oh, no.
Exactly right. Gary Pretty had a really good addition onto Chloe's post, where he wrote about how you can use cognitive service speech APIs to make very realistic speech. So in Chloe's version, it's like very much like, hello, it is me, your boyfriend. But Gary's blog, which I just read last night, uses the cognitive speech APIs, and it sounds like a human. So it's a very realistic sounding Azure Functions boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. And then finally, Andrew Locknet had a really good blog post I want to call out called Creating My First Azure Functions v2 App on a Webhook and a Timer. He was automating a Netlify build process with Azure Functions. Really well written post, goes very deep, and also super clear to understand. So those are a few I wanted to highlight. And truthfully, I know somebody else tweeted me like 4 weeks ago and said, you should highlight this during your community highlights. And I lost the tweet. So whoever sent me that tweet, I am so deeply sorry. And if you send me another tweet closer to the next webcast, probably, then I promise I will highlight it.
Yeah, fun fact, Jeff's queue scales to 0 after 20 minutes.
Exactly. This is true. If you don't get an email response from me in 24 hours, you're probably not going to get one at all. Yeah, that's the window to resend. Okay. Last one, and then we'll go into some questions.
Oh, yeah, we got some good questions already coming in.
Oh, good. Upcoming events. Always a lot. So Asavri and Eduardo are in Amsterdam. I guess they're finishing Amsterdam now.
They should be done with Amsterdam.
For a Serverless Days meetup, a .NET community meetup. Eduardo's hanging out in Europe more because in 5 days, he will be at the Intelligent Cloud Conference in Copenhagen. So feel free to swing by and say hello to Eduardo there. At the JavaScript NGConf or AngularConf, how do you pronounce that? I mean, it's Angular, but is it NGConf?
I've always just read it.
Yeah. Actually, embarrassing story. The other day I was in I will tangent on this. The other day I was in a daily stand-up with Paul looking at our support tickets, and the word came on the board, which is FACADE.
Oh,
do you know what that word is?
I do, and I learned very late in my life, probably at 16.
Well, I learned at 30 that it is not facade, but it is facade. But yes, so now everyone publicly humiliate me for being an idiot and not knowing how to. And facade is correct, though, right?
Facade is correct.
Okay.
And see, I at least thought it was fakeade because it's a fake front of something, and I was like, yeah, that makes so much sense. It's the fake front. No, I was in high school at some point when I mispronounced that. I had two separate words. I knew them both as different things, and I'd never tried to spell
and like
facade.
When Paul said facade, I was like, I know that word. I just never, I never would have spelled it. So I'm sure I've said this many times, maybe even on one of these webcasts, but I'll never do it again. So English is hard. The biggest one, PyCon is happening in Cleveland. We have like 3 or 4 people from our team going to that. Microsoft Build, though, is huge in Seattle, May 6th through 8. Alex, any thoughts on Build?
If you're gonna be there, we're gonna have a booth. Jeff and I have a presentation. I think we can say that. I think that'll be known. Jeff and I have a presentation. We're gonna be showing off all sorts of cool stuff.
Some of those secret announcements will be popping up in Alex and I's session. So yes, definitely make it to Build if you can. If you can't, always a large live and digital stream. Then closing up towards June-ish, there's the Integrate conference in London that I'll be traveling to, and a corollary in Seattle that someone from our team will be at. And then I'll also be at, that wasn't my computer. That was the other one. At Dev Intersection in Orlando, I will be there as well. So that's it for events.
Cool,
Alex?
Cool.
Any questions you're seeing coming up that you want to grab off the top? And I'll start looking through too.
So the first question is from Daniel Jaffa, who is asking if we should use one function with one app insights and one storage account. This is a popular one, and I think while we're at it, I'm going to talk about whether you should have one function per function app.
Yes, both great questions.
So it's kind of a three-tiered answer. The functions calling the storage account is the biggest thing to eliminate first. You should have one storage account per function, because if you're hitting your function a ton and you have a ton of stuff in storage, you can actually start to get throttled on your storage account. So just to keep your resources isolated, keep one storage account per function. App Insights is a little bit more complicated. The Functions portal is pretty good at pulling out all of the different functions and showing all their logs different places in App Insights. But the App Insights portal is a little bit less clever about pulling them out. So some of the views work really, really, really well with the App Insights portal. Like the app map works awesome if you send everything to one App Insights
very
instance.
true. Yep.
But if you go to the request statistics or the failure statistics, it'll sum up every single site that's being sent to App Insights. So that's more of a personal preference, whether or not you want all of your metrics summed together for your whole solution, or whether you want individual dashboards for individual sites. And finally, something that you didn't ask, but I do want to answer. We get so many people asking how many functions you should have in a function app.
Yes.
And I always say, if you are in consumption and you really, really, really care about cold start, you should put all of your functions for one solution in the same function app, because then they'll all cold start all at once and you'll only have the one cold start. But if you're looking to scale really, really far and optimize for cost, you should have one function per app, because then they will all scale independently and they can all grab resources as they need to, and you'll have the fastest startup time possible.
And the only other constraint too is to be aware that in a consumption plan, it's one CPU core or one CPU and 1.5 GB of memory. So if you cram like 30 functions in the same app and all of them need an eighth of a CPU, then they're going to start fighting against resource constraints when they are on one of those instances. So use those to guide your decision. There's no one answer for everything, but I think that kind of rule of thumb that Alex gave is a very good one.
Cool. I have another one. Somebody asking if VNet support will also support PowerShell VNet-based functions. This is a really good question. The premium plan right now is Windows only, and our PowerShell implementation, the private preview PowerShell, is going to be on Windows. So you will be able to use PowerShell to call into VNet resources on a premium plan using the new VNet integration.
Yes, so nice automation if you need to go VNet into a VM and run some PowerShell scripts or whatever else. It should all be there. Okay, and... Oh, good. Thiago will be at the Intelligent Cloud Conf. Thiago, I didn't know you were over there right now, but that's great. Okay, so I don't see any other questions other than people who really want us to have DI, and I do as well. So keep an eye on upcoming events or upcoming announcements around DI as we make the final changes. Alex, did you have something too that you found or wanted to grab?
No, these are all the questions I see. We have about a minute left in our time slot. Do you want to see a premium function call a VNet?
More than anything in the world, but while you set that up, I will answer one question from Kevin, which is app development around running Azure Functions on premises. So specifically brought up the Azure Functions runtime capital R, which was a preview offering, which was you installed it on like Windows Server and it would run HTTP functions only. The answer I will give is yes, there is active development plans for Azure Functions on premises. However, the angle that we are focusing now is to enable like scale on premises as well, and not just running on a single server, is tying closer into things like Kubernetes. So you can already see blog posts from a few months ago, maybe a year ago, around how you can publish a function container to Kubernetes. That's also an area that we've been actively looking at and developing as well. So if you have a scenario where you want to run Azure Functions on premises, it's definitely worth reaching out to us right now because we've got some stuff that we're cooking up that we'll be able to share more about as that gets a little bit more well cooked. Alex, show us some VNet goodies.
All right, so we're in a new, different premium function. This function is called Al-Karshi Premium Function. One of my truest masterpieces.
You make it sound so elusive.
It's so good. Oh yeah, have some more of that premium.
Yes, I will.
Premium bubbly.
The sparkling bubbly.
So this is the VNet configuration page, the same as you would get for a dedicated app service plan. And you can see I'm connected to a VNet, and it's actually giving me an address range that I'm connected to. Something that's really cool with the Preview VNet integration, it's not point-to-site VPN based. You're actually directly connecting to that VNet and getting a virtual interface. And we have a range of IPs because we're obviously scaling dynamically, and we need some number of IPs to use as we scale. So on this VNet, I have a top secret default WordPress site that the world cannot have access to. Let's just pretend it has confidential customer information, because I think it's confidential. I would be mortified for the 2017 default template to leak out to the world. So this function is connected to this VNet, and I have a proxy here that has a public URL for my function, and the backend URL is going to this 10 dot URL for my WordPress VM on my site. And obviously this 10 dot isn't going to work, but I'm going to try to go to it on my computer anyway, just to show you I am not VPN'd into the VNet. No trickery going on behind the scenes. This browser does not have access to this network. If I go back in here, though, and I grab my proxy, what this is going to do is I'm going to send a request to my function. My function is going to send that request along the VNet to the WordPress site, and then give me back the response. And I'm going to see my confidential
You just leaked it.
WordPress default background.
Image. Yep.
But this allows you to access secured resources without exposing those resources out to the internet. So I can get this image and feed it back to my customers, but I'm not trying to secure the whole like WordPress management interface and make sure that no one can ever take over that site.
Correct. And like if you have a SQL server or Azure SQL database that's behind a firewall or in a VNet, and your function needs to access the data, this gives you an option to do that too. Yeah. All right, so we got a few last questions, and we do have, I've got a minute or two left before we need to run out of here. We do have this blocked. We've been doing these longer, no one's complained, and I'm looking at the concurrent users, and there's still people around, so you get to hang with us for a bit longer. This was a great question from Kevin. Are there any plans for a production.settings.json, similar to how there's a local.settings.json? It's very interesting. So this came up earlier this week in that somebody wanted a way to easier set app settings as part of the deploy. Like the short answer is, in the cloud, your production.settings.json are your function application settings. But I think some people have this pain of it's not always easy to set app settings. So I'm imagining, Kevin, you're kind of getting at how do we make that a little bit easier? Yeah,
and I guess the long answer is slots. Right? Wouldn't that give you the ability to swap out two different sets of app settings?
Potentially, yeah. And the other trick with it as well is your .settings.json star dot should never be checked into source control. So I think the fear would be, because they're going to have secrets, connection strings, whatnot. If you had a production settings.json, you need some way to give it to all of the developers. So it's an interesting problem. Like I get what you're saying. I know from a tooling standpoint, if you go to like VS Code, you can right-click a function app and say upload settings or edit your settings right from VS Code. I think the source of truth should probably be your function app so that you don't have multiple files floating around and you're potentially overwriting. So we try to give you better tools to set those, whether it's Azure DevOps, VS Code, or Visual Studio. Slots also, as Alex mentioned, could help too. So that's just something on that one. Did you see any other questions? I can grab another one or two.
Yeah, if you want to grab another one.
Cecil asked, any updates on being able to run app service auth locally? Yeah, because we have the. Do you know the answer to this? Because I don't have an update on this.
No, there's no update. I am almost positive that there's nothing. There's no update for it.
I saw a thread design going around for like keys and how we can deal with keys and Docker containers and locally, but I'm not sure on the app service auth piece.
Yeah, it's a good request.
It is. I know it's on a backlog. It's just not under active development right now.
Yeah, thumb up those user voice items because we do look at those.
Absolutely.
Those get percolated to the top a little bit better than emojis on GitHub issues.
Absolutely.
The emojis get things under production done faster, and the user voice gets things onto GitHub to the point where they can get done faster.
That is a fact. What's a good resource for learning more about VNets, specifically in the Azure context?
Well, the Azure networking team has a bunch of docs about the general VNet functionality, and we just lit up 3 new docs for functions specifically around VNet integration. Those just went live this morning on the docs page. They're linked to kind of in the premium mesh of docs. And we also, it's worth noting, if you want to learn more, we share all of our VNet infrastructure with App Service. It's all on the same underlying technology. So if you read up on the App Service VNet integration docs, specifically the App Service ACE and App Service VNet integration, there's really, really good descriptions of how all that stuff works. And most of that information you can take with you back into functions land.
Great. Perfect. Very good. So with that, thank you all very much for joining. Be sure, go click on that blog post. Give us a lot of page views on the Announcing Premium Functions blog.
Retweet.
Tweet, retweet, get it, make it more viral if you can, whatever forms you can use. Last week, we only have 11 likes on this video. Last week we had like 52 because we called it out at the beginning. But at the very least, we will be doing another one of these live webcasts probably right around the week of build. So we timed this webcast so that it will be about a month away. So plan on like the May 6th to 8th timeframe. We should do another live webcast just on functions updates. If you want to know when that will be, you can click subscribe to this channel and you get nice alerts from YouTube, or follow us on Twitter at Azure Functions, where we tweet all of this out. Great. Anything else you want to say? Any last shout outs, Alex?
Absolutely no remaining shout outs.
And with that, then, thank you everyone so much and have a great rest of your day. See ya.